Well, hello, Kevin Cashman. It is a pleasure to be with you today.
Well, it's more than a pleasure. And you know what I'm most excited about is we don't have any scripts. I don't know what questions you're going to ask me, and it's going to be exciting and fun. So I look forward to it, and thanks for the invite.
Awesome. Yeah, well, as I was just sharing with you before we came online, I came up to Breckenridge here in the Rocky Mountains yesterday, and my husband and I have been juggling which room to do our calls in, and so I've left all my notes in another room. So I'm just winging it.
Well, you have to be more brave, and you'll be in good shape. If you're brave enough, you don't need notes.
Well, I'm just going to be brave because I haven't got
Yes,
any,
that's
and
great.
and so Kevin, you're the co-leader of the CEO and enterprise and leader development at Corn Ferry. I hope I got that title right.
It's a long whatever it is. We run the practice that coaches CEOs, CEO successors, and then all the next generation to the C-suite. That's what we really do.
Yeah,
And if that had a shorter answer, I'd give it to you. So we
yeah,
coach CEOs and successors mainly.
yeah. Well, I mean, and Corn Ferry, number one executive search company in the world. And of course, I think you came on board with Corn Ferry, what, about 13 years ago?
Yeah, almost 15 now, which
Oh,
is
wow.
mind-boggling and inconceivable for me. And most people know Korn Ferry as a search firm because we've been the largest search firm in the world for a couple decades, the number one. So, and then 15 years ago, almost, I joined Korn Ferry, and they had a little consulting business that was about 10 million, and now consulting is $1 billion in sales, and different aspects of search are about $1 billion too. So now we're a $2 billion public company, and advisory is as big as search.
Wow. Wow. Well, all credit to you for the role you've played in not just obviously growing the business, but really the impact that you make on leaders. And when you make an impact on leaders, then you make an impact on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of employees. So
Well, yeah. First, you said credit to me. I better not take any credit for anything. I have 9,000 colleagues who deserve all the credit, and these wonderful clients. But I did do a calculation last week. Somebody said, "Well, last week, just give me last week. What was the market cap of the companies you coached?" And I said, "Oh my goodness, it's big. You're not going to believe me when I tell you." And they said, "No, tell me." I said, "Oh God, no. Okay, I'll tell you. Over $1 trillion just in a week." So we get the good privilege to work with the largest companies in the world and the top, CEOs and successors. And another calculation I did is I looked throughout the course of a year, the different people we were working with, and then how many employees they touched. Well, not employees, how many customers they touched. Because employees was about, I don't know, 1 million. But the customers those CEOs and successors touched was 4 billion people. So that gives you a sense of scope, that when we have the privilege of working with top people, we get the purpose and privilege of touching a lot of lives through them. So, I don't take it lightly, but I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling and inspiring at the same time.
yeah, it is. It's a huge privilege and a huge responsibility. And it kind of brings me around to, I want to talk about numerous things with you today. And you have so much wisdom, so much insight. And I had your book on my shelf probably 20 years ago, I think it's Leading from the Inside Out, or
Leadership from the inside out. Yep.
yeah. And it really has informed my own thinking over the years. And more recently, reading The Pause Principle, which honestly just speaks volumes to me, because I so often need to pause and don't always pause as often as would serve me and others. But in terms of the work you do, obviously it's extremely meaningful, and you have a deep sense of purpose in your work. It's far more than a job. It's not a career. I'm guessing it's a calling for you. If I think that's probably fair to say.
It's fair to say, and it calls very loudly, and sometimes that calling blocks out everything else. So I have to be purposeful, but be aware that, you don't overinvest in it. But it's something I love. And it's honestly, this may sound kind of shocking, it's something I do not want to retire from. And most of my clients, they're accumulating wealth and doing different things, and they're dreaming of the golf course and all that. And I go, oh my God, how boring would that be?
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you ask someone, do you love your spouse? And you go, yeah, but I love my spouse a lot, but I'm thinking of leaving them. No, you don't do that. It's like when you love what you do.
Yeah.
Retirement is, to me, a really obsolete principle, really obsolete, because I think we're here to touch the lives of people. So when you get the privilege to be able to do that, I look forward to every day. Although sometimes with Korn Ferry, when I'm filling out a timesheet, I go, why am I filling out a timesheet? So there are moments, but by and large, it's wonderful, and I feel very fortunate.
Look, I feel almost exactly the same when it comes to retiring. I love, for me, it's very much a calling, and I can see myself still flying around the world when I'm 80, giving talks here and there.
Yeah, of course. My mentor, or one of my mentors, was Warren Bennis, and I still remember him when he was in his early 80s, after he did a memoir, and I was at a conference, and he was on a big screen because he wasn't traveling anymore, and I just loved him, and he was like the godfather of leadership development. And to see someone contributing all the way into their 80s. And by the way, do you know why retirement age is 65?
I have no idea.
Well, the Social Security Administration, when it was set up, did a calculus of when, this was in the 20s or something, and did a calculus of when most people would be dead, so they didn't have to pay out Social Security, and then the system would work. And the magic age was 65. That's why we're all conditioned to retire at 65. I mean, why? Why does some government agency plant that idea in our brains, and then we're all supposed to retire at the same time? Doesn't make any sense to me. Now, if you're miserable, you may be thinking about retirement, but retirement won't solve that. Purpose would solve that dilemma. So to me, it's not about retirement. It's about, living and leading and contributing on purpose.
Yeah. And, given that we spend, about a third of our adult lives at work, to me, the ultimate tragedy is that we might actually use up some of those great years of our life, waking up every day, kind of going, oh,
yeah,
today, and counting the days to retirement. That's a pretty sad way to move through life. And yet a lot of people don't have a sense of purpose. And we know there's enormous power that is unleashed and potential that's unleashed. So how did you come to arrive at I guess you have got a lot of insight around purpose, but what does it mean to you, and why is it so important? And not just from an individual lens, but also from a leadership lens. And to anybody who's joining us live on the live stream here, I welcome any of your questions. We will get to those hopefully at some point during this conversation. So please feel free to add those in. But I just really want to kind of understand your journey and your why you feel purpose is so central to great leadership and actually great organizations.
Yeah, I think that purpose is like an infinity loop, where you have personal purpose on one side of the loop, and then you have, your organizational or societal purpose, or whatever groups we relate to. And then the individual purpose feeds the broader organizational purpose or societal purpose. And that broader purpose feeds us too. So being clear about our purpose. Now, there's a problem with purpose, and that is many people have been through writing mission statements, and it goes on, and it's multi-pages and all of that. But getting it distilled to its essence is what's challenging about purpose. And because we need to have our purpose like a mantra in our mind and heart, so that in the moment we can challenge ourselves to be it, to live it, to bring it forward. So it has to be boiled down to such an essence that it can inform us in the moment. So we developed, and this is actually my next book. It's going to be called The Purpose Principle. How original after the pause principle, but I can't help the alliteration. So the model of the purpose principle is, imagine a Venn diagram with these three circles. And let's say the top circle are our gifts. So clarifying what our gifts are. And now we might have a big inventory of gifts when we think about our experiences and the people who have impacted us and so on. But distilling it down to maybe 1, 2, or 3 that are our best gifts, regardless of what domain we're in, whether we're in our personal life, community, family, or organization, that's the best of us coming forward. So that's one part of the Venn, gifts. The second thing is, what do we need to grow? And this is the missing part of most purpose statements, and it's the force accelerator. What do we need to grow to make our gifts even more powerful? And usually that grow is something we know, but we have a hard time living. We hear it from our family. We hear it from our spouse. We've seen it in our 360s. We know the theme of it. We know how important it is, but maybe we haven't really taken it on. It's kind of like an athlete who identifies the underdeveloped part of their game, right, and then works on that. I remember Kobe Bryant telling me years ago at the beginning of his career, I asked him, why did your game change so much? And he said, I shot 2,000 jump shots every day for 9 months in a row. Wow. And I asked, how long did it take? He said 6 hours a day. And then he kind of lightened it up and said, well, I have people throwing me the ball so I can shoot, for 4 hours straight. And so he identified the part of his game that made his gifts more powerful. And then he was almost unstoppable to, in his game, like we can be in the game of life or leadership. So that's the second thing. What is the thing that we need to grow that'll actually make our gifts more powerful to more people? And then the third thing is, what do we want to give? And purpose doesn't become real or purposeful until it touches the lives of others. Yeah. So the big give is, what do you want to give to people that will really contribute to their lives? And my whole life, I can't really say why, but my whole life I've been fascinated with human development, human growth, spiritual growth, psychological growth, breakthrough growth. It's what I studied, what I loved, where I got my degrees in. I used to be a meditation teacher during and after college. And then I, started coaching people. So everything I did was really about impacting the development of people. So that was my big give. And I think if I'm great, besides all the loved ones in our life, what I'm really grateful and maybe what I've done well is I've organized my life around that give. And thank God it worked out too. So it wouldn't necessarily have worked out. But those three things, our gifts, our growth edge, and what we want to give to the lives of people, if we have those three components boiled down to their essence, you'll have a powerful purpose statement that can guide you in the moment.
That's and I love that. I mean, there's a 3 Gs. You've got the alliteration again, right? The gifts.
I wish it was 5G, but it would be too complicated.
Hey, yeah, okay. Well, we might remember them all. But as I sit there and listen and hear that, and I'm thinking about that for myself, what's my growth edge, right? And that obviously changes and evolves as we go through life, right? What I had to grow in my 20s is different than in my 30s or 40s, etc.
Well, that could be for me. It's been the same. I've always been more of an introvert, more solitary, more autonomous and independent, and that kind of spurred on my entrepreneurial career and so on in consulting. So I've always the connecting with people, right, and teaming and collaboration. Now, I've grown in that area a little bit, and Korn Ferry has probably, I told our CEO the other day, yeah, you acquired LeaderSource, my company, but I acquired collaboration from Korn Ferry, because with thousands of people and every project is a big team. We have some accounts with 100 people working on an account from Korn Ferry. I mean, it is big time collaboration. And it's changed me. So the part of my core purpose statement that reminds me of my constant grow is together. Together is my growth edge, and it's improved. It's improved, but I'm still more naturally independent and autonomous than I am. That's, it's why I didn't choose a corporate career. I was, an entrepreneur. I was the kid walking through the neighborhood selling door to door, and, people who came to the door felt sorry for me. And so I had a business, but so I've always had that tendency. Now, for me, the other parts of the purpose statement together happens to be the grow. The thing that I think is a gift, and it's hard to say, okay, here's my gift. Isn't this cool? It's hard to verbalize it, but if I'm being honest and authentic, when I'm at my best, even though I'm a bad dancer, the first word is dancing between the playful and the profound. Okay, that's when I'm at my best. I had somebody tell me the other day, you know what you do well? And I said, no, tell me. He said, you make people laugh and you make people cry. I said, that's it. That's it. When I'm at my best, it's those, laughter is this kind of burst of surprise and inspiration. It brings, tears and depth. And, when I'm at my best, I'm going, and it's unexpected. It's back and forth and back and forth. So dancing between the playful and the profound, to grow beyond, that's that give thing, grow beyond, together. So that represents the 3 Gs. And I can be in a meeting and maybe the energy goes out of the room and I go, what's going on? Am I not encouraging together enough? Am I, is it maybe deep and serious, but it needs playfulness, right? What is it that I can bring here? Maybe we're stuck in a concept of the past and need to grow beyond. So it can constantly be an audit to say, you should bring more of this at this time.
Which brings me to a question that I wrestle with myself, and I see when in my own work with people and organizations is, most people know intuitively that there's a real power in being on purpose, in working towards something that's bigger than ourselves, that's really meaningful, that's contributing to something greater. And yet how quickly and easily we can be pulled off purpose.
Yeah.
and how quickly you can get caught up in the ego and pride and looking good and being self-interested or not acting in ways that are really aligned with that deeper sense of purpose and that deeper truth almost. And so to me, daily practices are really important, like those little daily rituals, those small things we do every day help us do everything else better. But what do you think is really valuable for people to stay on purpose so that they are showing up and living from purpose as often as possible?
Yeah. I think the key to being on purpose is knowing when you're off purpose, right? Not thinking of it as a constant state, because what's a constant state in life? There isn't a constant state. Everything is changing all the time, constantly, eternally changing. So, we'll be on purpose and off purpose. So it's the awareness I'm off. I'm not stepping into my gifts. I'm not, aware of my growth challenges now. I'm not really stepping into that. So knowing when we're off. I know an Aikido master, I used to do different forms of martial arts and so on. And this Aikido master I went to, he would have many people, attacking him at the same time, and then he would just be throwing people, and he would sense people behind him and throw them over. So we asked him, well, how are you so centered all of the time? How do you do it? And he said, well, here's the truth. I'm off center a lot, but I come back to center really, really fast. That's what purpose is. It's not going to be a constant state, but your vigilance and awareness and mindfulness, am I on or off, is the practice to come back to center.
Yeah.
So there's lots of other things too, but that's the most important practice. I mean, the first thing you have to, clarify it, and then you'll probably do a rough draft and then refine it your whole life, because, our awareness and insight grows. But then knowing when we're on or off and bringing ourselves back really, really fast.
And I think in times when there's a lot of pressure and we're feeling perhaps overwhelmed or anxious or just really under the pump, or maybe we've just had a gut punch and we're knocked to the ground, and you feel like the rug's been pulled out from beneath you, are the very times we really need to be on purpose the most, but actually we can really lose our way. And I get that purpose acts as a compass, but as we look at the context of this pandemic,
yeah,
and it's obviously we've all gone through this storm, but in different lifeboats, and we're not out of it yet. And many people have found it to be a pretty very disruptive experience. For some people, a crucible experience that's really utterly thrown them. And so, how do we, when in the midst of the most challenging time, what is it that you have found helps people to really operate from purpose? I mean, you said notice when you're off purpose, but that really plants us. I call the concept is self-certainty. When there's so much uncertainty around you, what can you be certain about? How do you ground yourself in your core values and your core strength and your core purpose? What's your experience of those who have actually really shown up in the most powerful, purposeful way through this pandemic, particularly those that you would work with in senior leadership roles?
Well, that's a big question, because as we've all experienced in this past year, everyone listening survived. So congratulations, right? Everyone who's listening, even though it was tough, you got through it, right? So, but many people didn't. Many people did not, and they're not here to represent themselves. And it can be loved ones, friends, members of the community at large. So we saw the tough consequences of people that did not make it, at least in this life, right? I'm thinking if I should tell you a story.
Yes.
I'm gonna tell you. So if you think it's time to share it.
Yep.
I should not have survived last year. I should not be here right now. And it was not COVID, but it was during COVID. And remember last April when things felt so dark, right? Where we didn't know even what it was or how it was transmitted. And the vaccines could be years off, right? It was like, wow, is this how the end of civilization feels? Early signs. It was tough. And I was in my house alone. And my wife and son were stranded in Bogota, where they are from, and we have a place, and they couldn't get out. And I tried everything to get them out, and they had to ride the storm in Colombia, which is a whole nother level of challenge. So that, and then, Zoom calls, and we were reorganizing our organization and cutting salaries. I had to call up one of our CEO advisors who ran a Fortune 50 company who, works for us on the side and helps us coach. And I had to cut his compensation. So it was rough. So I was exhausted. So I went upstairs into our house and decided to go in our main bedroom where I don't sleep, but I decided to go there to read a little bit and feel a connection to the family a little bit. And I just went out, just almost like I hit the bed and I don't remember anything else except I had the phone in my hand. So that's the last thing I remember. And somehow I stumbled out of that room. I mean, really tired, but I don't remember this. Stumbled out of the room and tripped and fell over a balcony 15 feet onto my head. And so I have this, there's funny parts of the story, believe it or not. So I opened up my head from here to there and from here to the middle. And so I have a big Y on my head and it looks like a brand. So I now think that is so cool. It's like if I wanted to brand my head with a symbol, Y would be a good thing to ponder, right? So I have a big Y in my head, but that was just facial, lacerations are just, gushing. So I was there what appears to be 2 hours. I had 22 fractures, broke both sides of my neck, broke multiple vertebrae, broke almost all the ribs on my right side. And then to punctuate it, I hope this is okay, I broke my 2 middle fingers. It was like, just to punctuate it, right? Now, what's really strange and inspiring too is somehow I don't remember this, but I went up the stairs in this state and I got into the bedroom that I intended to go in and collapsed in there for another couple hours. So I was leaving and the doctors all told me with the amount of blood I had left and these fractures and the shock, I was going and I was alone. So, but the weird thing is I woke up because I had this overwhelming feeling. It wasn't even a thought. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't dramatic, but it was powerful. And this feeling was live. If whatever this thing is, whether it's survival instinct or spiritual presence or whatever, it was so powerful that I had no choice. And my eyes popped open and live was the only option. And I had my cell phone, which doesn't make any sense. How did it survive that unbelievable crash? I was like a pile of human rubble who somehow went upstairs. And this live impulse let me call 911, tell them how to get in my house. And then I was gone for 13 more hours, no memory of them bringing me out, no memory of being checked in the hospital during COVID, nothing. And then I woke up the next day and I was a mess, right? And, but I have to say, I'm so grateful.
Wow.
I was in the hospital 6 weeks, and you know how hospitals want to get you out right away.
Particularly in pandemics.
Yeah, exactly. They needed to get me out, but couldn't. So I'm so grateful for my loved ones, for everyone who helped, and so on. You don't comprehend love till you're really dependent.
Yeah.
That's when you really get love, right? And you let it in, because you don't have any other choice. You don't have to be the one holding things. You can't be the one holding things up anymore.
Yeah.
But besides that, the thing I'm most grateful for is this live experience. It was life-changing. Now, I tell different people this experience, and some people go, "Oh, it was my brother said it's your survival instinct. Isn't that cool?" I went, "Well, maybe, I don't know." My sister said it was our mom, and I went, "I didn't hear her, but that sounds interesting." And other people give different spiritual interpretations of different traditions, and I go, "Yeah. I appreciate your interpretation, but." My experience was
Profound.
It was itself. To put it in any kind of category, just trivialized it. And after 6 weeks thinking about it in the hospital, I said, does it matter if it was survival instinct, spiritual presence, who knows what? Does it matter? Does it need a label? No, doesn't need a label.
Yeah.
But it animates everything.
So I was just going to ask, how has it changed your experience with being alive, a human being on this planet in the whatever time you have?
Well, that's another big question. You are really good at this. I knew before, but I haven't been the recipient of your skills. So thank you. It's really changed my life. I would have thought that that's the point. Maybe I would have retired, right? That's what my brain would have told me if that happened. But now I have to tell you something pretty tough. The first 3 months, I not only lost my physical abilities that have come back now, not as good, but they're back, thank God, I can still do this work and everything, get around fine. But it looked like I might be disabled physically. And then mentally I was. My cognition was not good, but I was aware it was not good. So that was even worse. So I went into despair. When your brain doesn't work and your body doesn't work and you're aware of it and you're purpose driven and you want to go back and do that and you can't, it was despair. Yeah. So fortunately, I guess this live impulse actually, brought me back to life. But the thing that was really bizarre was seeing my brain and my body come back. It was like witnessing what I do and the value of it, witnessing it, because it came back. It was gone, and then it started coming back, and the physiology came back. So the preciousness of what we do got more precious. And so I wanted to come back and do the work, but I didn't know if I could. So I started off slow, and then I realized, oh, geez, maybe I'm more passionate about this now. And I hate to admit this, but I think I'm better at it now. You know? And so then I came back, and
That's awesome.
I changed my role, and a colleague is going to manage the practice, and I get to do the things I love, thought leadership and working with clients. So that was good too. I needed a pounding in the head to go, change your role to only what you love and do best. So help there too.
It's an interesting one. I think sometimes those experiences which challenge us and test us the most can also teach us the most, and transform us the most too.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we enjoy them, doesn't mean we want them, doesn't mean they're fun, but
yes. Well, I've seen that, and you've seen it too, obviously, in our own lives, but with our clients a lot. We have an exercise where we take people through their lifeline, their highs from 0 to 10, the peaks of their life, and then the valleys of their life, and then they do it chronologically throughout all of their life, and it turns out two things are the most transformative from seeing thousands of these. Mentors and people in our lives who help us grow, they're transformative, and they tend to be on the quote positive side. I don't know if there's really positive or negative. It's all part of life. But on the upper part, tends to be people who recognized us, saw us, and maybe saw our potential before we did. And they tend to be transformative. And then on the low end, it's loss, right? Losing relationships, losing loved ones, losing our capabilities, losing health, loved ones loss, and then the recovery. So those two things are they appear to be equally transformative.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, I've also seen where sometimes those people who can be the most testing, where a relationship might break down, they mightn't always be a positive experience with those people, but they can be incredibly informative as well, as we learn, how to deal with a boss that was very difficult, or sometimes a marriage that's broken down. But when it comes to loss, I think everyone's experienced loss in one or many different forms over this pandemic too. People have lost out on experiences that they would have cherished. I have children who graduated in our lounge room, or I've lost the ability to see my parents right now, as it's not easy to get to Australia, but I mean, obviously people have lost loved ones too. There's been a lot of different loss of jobs, loss of certainty, loss of some of the things in our lives. But I think loss often brings up sadness, and sadness points us to what matters most as an emotion.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah, I think that's really true. Yeah. The conversion of loss to learning, to go through it, like to go through the sadness and depression, and learn from that and come out the other side. That's where transformation happens. And when we don't convert our privileges to learning, those would be the upsides, like mentors, and seeing how important that is. Therefore, it's important to do it with others. And we don't process our losses into learning. That's where our shadows dominate our competencies. So that's where you get really bright, competent leaders, but the shadow shows up in their 360. And that gives insight into the big grow of purpose. So facing the upsides and downsides in a holistic way, and bringing that into our purpose. So there's a real connection between our life story, our losses, our privileges, the 3 Gs of our core purpose, and living that will serve more people because it creates less shadows on people.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that concept of our shadows, we've all got them. And I know for you, so much of your work developed the whole person to develop the whole leader. And part of developing the whole person is shining the light on those parts of our own being that maybe we don't like to look. Sometimes owning where we are operating from an insecurity or a fear as a desire to prove and impress and get ahead and compete and whatever cost, and how that can ultimately trip us up and disconnect us from people. And obviously we can't be operating from purpose when we're
and I think shining the light is equally important to shine the light on our gifts and our strengths, because sometimes part of our shadow is not owning those, right, and being those, and then shining a light on the shadows too. I think they're both equally important to grow as a whole person, to grow as a whole leader. And some of us, the shadows of the downsides are creating more problems. For some of us, it's the lack of light and appreciation of what our gifts and contribution. But ultimately, we want to progress in both of those. And the other thing about this, we're talking about the journey of authenticity or self-awareness and so on. And like with purpose, as far as I can see, there's no end. There's no end in the journey to authenticity. There's no end to the journey of self-awareness, awareness of others, and purpose. And I find that wonderful. I love that. Our lives are always only partially written.
Well, and it makes me think of, I like to refer to us not so much as human beings, but as human becomings.
Yeah.
And we're on a journey towards a lifelong journey to becoming all of whom we have it within us to be.
Yes.
And that we're none of us ever arrive. We cannot arrive. And it is constantly peeling back the layers. And I think when we get to the next level, there's more layers because you're in a different situation, and maybe people are expecting more from you, and you've got other forces at play. And
the being becoming thing is so powerful. I mean, the first philosopher I saw who articulated that was Martin Buber, and his whole model was we have to be both being and becoming. And it's really interesting around authenticity. Some people think of authenticity as, well, I'm authentic, but they're not, right?
Yeah.
And instead of, we're all authentic to our current state of development, no matter how developed or undeveloped it is. How can we not be authentic to it, right? Even if it's underdeveloped. So we're all authentic to our current state of development, and we're all inauthentic to our potential state. That's the becoming. And that interaction of authentic being and authentic becoming is where we grow.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, even the term authenticity, it's like if we're always doing our best might be what we're actually capable of. But right now, in this moment, I'm doing my best. And
others are too. That's why we're compassionate.
Yeah. And I think that compassion piece being so important there too.
Because if we think we're authentic and other people are not, we judge them.
Yeah.
It's not a good place to be.
Yeah. So, and obviously, I mean, we've talked a lot around purpose here, and thank you for sharing your very personal and very profound story too. I can imagine it takes a while to just unpack and process that entire experience.
Yeah. And different, I cried at one point when I talked about loved ones, but what's interesting about that story is different times I tell it, I cry about different things. So that means it was pretty foundational. And when I replay it, different things touch me. So today it was thinking about how, and I've never said this before, until this session, we don't know what love is until we're totally dependent. And I've never said that before, but that insight was very real and transformative.
Just the power of that. Yeah. Which brings me around to, obviously, I talk and write a lot about being brave with our lives, leading bravely, speaking bravely, loving bravely, showing up bravely, and having, which obviously I use kind of the term synonymously with courage.
Yes.
And I think what that means is an ongoing journey of evolution and becoming as well. What does it mean to be brave with your life? But as you look, and as people are listening, and we're sort of bringing this full circle with purpose.
Yeah.
When you think about, how can you help those who are in leadership roles, those that are stepping up into bigger leadership roles, and those who maybe don't even know if they've got what it takes to be a leader? Where do you see the intersection of purpose and courage?
Yes. Okay, we could take the whole week on this subject. It's so fascinating, and that's why I'm so happy that we connected, right? And we'll be collaborating on all sorts of things, because this intersection of purpose and courage is really transformative. We just finished a 3-year research study on, what's the new leadership required for the new world. And thank God we didn't publish it right before the pandemic, because we learned more in the last year of the 3-year study than everything up to that point. And we isolated what are the capabilities that are required of leaders now in the world. And there's 10 or 11 of those. And I won't bore you with that, because they're a version of competency models that we all know pretty well. But identify the competencies that are needed in enterprise leadership, because it's very different than executive leadership. Executive leadership is a silo, hierarchical, and very vertical, but enterprise leadership is horizontal, it's lateral, it goes across, and so on. So it's a different kind of capability and competency, but I won't go into that. What's interesting, based on your question, is there's mindsets underneath these capabilities that open or close the expression of our capabilities. For instance, we might be a really great strategic thinker, but if our courage is closed, the expression of our strategic competency will be diminished tremendously, right? So these mindsets are more foundational to development than the competencies. They're like a camera aperture that either opens up and lets things out, or closes down and restricts the person. And there's 5 of these, but I won't grind through them all. But the first 2 are really your question. And one is courage. Courage mindset is transformative. And we did a research study 2 years ago to look at what's the most important competency or trait that is in leaders across all industries. So we studied 5 industries, and we didn't know if there'd be a lot of correlation, or maybe there's none across all industries, but there was one, only one, and that was courage. Courage. Right. So you are onto something.
Yeah. Well, it was
Really?
whether Aristotle or Churchill who said, courage is the first of all virtues, because it is the only one that guarantees all others. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So everything is a courageous act. We're spinning on a planet 1,000 miles an hour hurtling through space, right? And we think everything's a constant. Who knows, right? It is wild when we really look at our life. So life is a courageous act. Live is a courageous act, right? Leadership is all about courage. Strategy is all about courage. Living our values is all about courage. Purpose requires courage. Purpose is the second mindset that to make an impact on the lives of others, we know that's what we want, and we know that's what energizes us and others and what gives meaning to our life. But we have to be courageous to live your gifts.
Well,
to know and to grow and to give. It takes courage. So courage and purpose feed each other.
Yeah. And to me, the question is, we're wired for safety. We're wired for comfort. We're wired for certainty. We're wired to look good and not lose face. And so unless we can clearly answer the question, be brave for the sake of what?
Yes. My God, that's great.
Brave for the sake of what? And that's the answer to that is the purpose. And
for the sake of what and the sake of why?
Yeah. For the sake of, why would I bother to stick my neck out, to pursue a new strategy, to give critical feedback to someone, to ask for what I want, to put myself out there and risk being exposed as not enough, and to risk the very things I'm at my deepest level afraid of, unless I had a clear and compelling sense of purpose and answer to that question. And that's where, to me, purpose really harnesses our inner resources, and it's where the rubber hits the road, that it compels us to break ranks with that comfort zone.
Yeah, to take you're endorsing my purpose work. I'm going to endorse your bravery work here. So I think we can have a debate on behalf of each other, but the thing is, the synergy between the two is the whole point. But I think people need to be brave enough to be authentic. It's not easy. It's no easy task, right? We're social beings. We want to be loved and we want to be accepted. It takes real bravery to be authentic. So we have to be brave enough to be authentic. We have to be brave enough to deeply connect with people, heart to heart. And that is bravery. It's courage, the heart, right? It's, in the word, right? Core, the heart, So we have to be brave enough to be authentic, brave enough to deeply connect, and brave enough to stand on our own when it's not popular or actively rejected. I remember, here's a funny story, but I remember speaking, Leadership from the Inside Out had just come out. And when Leadership from the Inside Out came out, I mean, Covey was around and Bennis was around, but they were unusual. Most of the books were around business and quality control and all of this kind of stuff, Deming's thing, which is all fine stuff, but it's just very external. So I really put my neck out with this book, and two things happened. I remember laying in, our bedroom and looking up at the ceiling and going, oh my God, I'm really, risking this. I may just be dismissed as this, soft, aspirational thing. Because just imagine, the book was written when there wasn't research on self-awareness. There wasn't research on emotional intelligence. There wasn't research on purpose and all of that. So it was really, I knew it was real because we had a laboratory of our clients and we had assessments we were using. So I knew it was grounded, but most of the marketplace didn't know that. So I went and spoke at a linkage conference. Warren, and we were the speakers were all in a room together getting ready for the conference. Warren Bennis was next to me, and Marshall Goldsmith was there, Jay Conger was there. So these, great people. And the head of the conference forgot I was there. I don't think she knew. She had figured out who this Cashman person. And she was right across the conference table for me. And she addressed the group and she said, "You know how much risk we're taking in this conference? Do you have any idea? We had Kevin Cashman as a keynote speaker in this conference. Can you believe it?" And I raised my hand and I said, "I can believe it. And I'm right here." So, you know, there are moments. I mean, if you're that, we got to be brave enough to stand alone. And it's hard.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. Amen. Well, I'm so glad you were brave enough to do what felt truthful and authentic for you, because I have read many leadership books over the years, and obviously there's a lot on strategy and all different, you know, all the different million forms and models and paradigms of leadership. But it really spoke to my values and my view. And obviously I come from a very human and heart level approach to, you know, who we lead by virtue of who we are ahead of what we do, or what MBA we got, or how brilliant we are at strategy. And who we are is, you know, if it is the essence of the impact we make on others. So thank you for doing that, Kevin, and thank you for continuing. And I thank that little voice, you know, the little angel that was above you as you were laying there, that was saying, live, 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 because you've got so much more to give to the world. And I'm just honestly, my heart is just filled with gratitude that I'm now spinning in your orbit and I get to learn and give with you. So thank you.
I feel so fortunate to work with you and work with the colleagues and work with the clients we do. You know, it's a humbling thing sometimes to think that we have the privilege to do this. It's inspiring. Mostly it's inspiring and fun and engaging, but occasionally I look at it objectively and go, wow, I am so fortunate. And I'm especially fortunate that we've connected and we can bring brave purpose to the world.
Amen. 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 Well, I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited for what's ahead. And as we hit the top of the hour, where has it gone? That went fast.
Yeah, it's amazing how time goes away when we're doing real things.
Amen. It's so true. All right. Well, look, thank you. And I'm sure we'll be talking again before too long. Be well.
Oh, yeah. Take care. All the best. Thank you. Bye.